Looking to up your real estate investing game? Well, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Sub2Deals Show with your host, Sub2 expert William Tingle.
Morning, Sub2ers. Here this morning with Traci, Ford Howell, and Phil Smith. They're two of our coaching group students, and they're here to talk about the foreclosure deal with more twists and turns than a cheap garden hose. Guys, this is a fascinating story. We've been watching it unfold for probably what, Traci, the last 6 weeks or so?
Since January the 26th.
Since January 26th. Okay. Guys, we're going to regale you today with a story full of things like foreclosure, bankruptcy, unknown spouses, last minute wire transfer issues, fraud by the seller, and a financial planner. But I'm going to let these guys tell you about it. Traci, tell us a little bit about how this thing got started.
Well, at first, I still am excited about it, but at first I was really blindly excited because I had reached out to wholesalers and got that lead from a local wholesaler. And he didn't tell me anything about it, just gave me a name and a phone number. And the seller, he didn't tell me anything. He basically gave me nothing but a number. It was an old backdated sheet where he had tried to resolve his mortgage and had a payoff amount, thinking that he was going to pay it off, trying to work with a financial planner to get his affairs in order. And so I just went in thinking, okay, that's the number. But that wasn't the number. I started trying to find out more about the loan and started uncovering some things. And the mortgage company would not respond to me at all. I just was hitting a brick wall over and over. And I just escalated to every day, to several times a day. There, about 2 weeks into it, I couldn't crack the code. But finally, I guess it was about a week and a half ago, William suggested go look at the filing and find out who the attorney is. So I did that, and I contacted the attorney, and she had a little information, but she couldn't negotiate. But I stumbled across her too. I called a wrong number, and I happened to call one of her personal friends who picked up the phone and called her at her office and gave her my email, and that's how I got in touch with her. So that was an accident as well. But finally, she sent in an order for the foreclosure, or for them to work with me in some way, or to give me a payment or a payoff to bring it current. And that was when I finally heard something out of the mortgage broker. And right. It was a rude little letter that said, give me the money, and I'm not going to talk to you again, even if you give me the money.
Yeah. I know when you were having a lot of trouble getting in touch with that guy, I said, this has got to be a subprime lender, B and C lender, that sort of thing. You don't have those problems typically, with the well-known, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, whatever. They will make contact with you. A lot of times what they'll do once they've hired an attorney is they'll tell you they can't speak to you. You need to go directly through the attorney, but at least they'll give you that courtesy.
Yes, people around there was a guy that was assigned to the case. And when I would get anybody but him, they would be very helpful, but they could give me very limited information. Mm-hmm. And finally, one of them did give me his email, but I did not hear back from him on email until the attorney contacted him.
Right.
So.
Right. I remember when you brought this deal to us, I think it was a deal evaluation call or something that we were doing in the coaching group. And I know we were all like, hey, why are you still on this? Why are you still on this call? You need to get this guy on the phone. We thought initially he owed about $79,000, and the value on the house was in the 120, upper 120, somewhere in that realm. And he was willing to walk away for, I think he had asked for $5,000 initially.
Right.
Okay. And you actually picked up the phone while you were in the coaching call and called and got the agreement, said, okay, when we're off the call, I'm going to drive out and get this thing under contract, if I remember correctly. So
I actually sent him a DocuSign while we were on. I just muted myself and sent the DocuSign, and he signed everything while we were all still in the meeting.
yeah, I remember that was great. Yeah, that really was. So anyway, so through this process, we uncover it seems like we're on track to do it. Now we're not. Something's happened. The seller's getting flaky. But you put your marketing out there. I know you talked about, okay, now I've got this house under contract. I want to make sure I can sell it. And we talked about what needed to be done. And so you ran the Facebook Marketplace ads and did those things, and tell us what all you did and the kind of response you got.
I put it on Craigslist, which actually got no response. Well, actually, I did get one response from Craigslist, but I just went and found a local shop and swap type, what's going on in the area, little Facebook page, and I put it on there, and I got about 50 responses. I think 50 was what I responded to. Once Phil and I knew we were going to try to move forward, I reached out to them again. And I think it was about 50 of them.
Okay. So, and that's just been in like the last 48 hours.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So, and how many, you got 50 responses. How many of these people, are waving this money at you? I remember when you first got this thing under contract, and you were telling me these people are just all over me wanting to give me money to buy this house.
Yeah, there are 3 really that have money, cash in hand, that this house fits their parameter.
Okay. All right. So anyway, we got some twists and turns going on here. We found that the guy's been in bankruptcy. We found out he hadn't made a payment on the house in 2-3 years, maybe. Do you remember
he had been trying to work with this financial planner that she was something, but he had been trying to work with her, it appeared, for about 3 years to get everything paid off, and they would get it almost under control, and then he'd get back into trouble. Or anyway, they were doing something. I really don't know what they did based on the document that they had filed as a second position lien. I really don't know what they did, but I know they had them strung along for about 3 years at the mortgage company.
Right. I know that was one of the things that you uncovered there at the very end was when we were doing the title work on this thing, you uncovered that there was some kind of blemish on title that had to be settled. And it turns out it was a fraud that was committed between the seller and the financial planner. Tell us about that, how that worked.
Yeah, that was a fun. So whenever we realized that it was going to go through, I thought, well, gosh, we don't have title work. We gotta get title work. So we thought it was going to be easy. Call the attorney. They maybe had done the title work and would share that with me. But the attorney was actually not in this state, and for some reason they could not share it with me here based on where they were in Georgia. So I don't know what the rules are about sharing it, but she couldn't share it with me. So I said, oh my goodness. So Phil actually walked me through how to check on everything. And I called, and sure enough, there was another lien. And it was the financial planner and the owner had decided that they were going to put a $15,000 lien in second position to try to get something if they came out of after his house.
Right.
But now the lien was in the way of him being able to get out of the foreclosure.
So they actually filed this thing in case there was an overage, in case it was bid up at the auction,
right?
That the second position would have to get paid off and he would get some money out of the deal.
Right. And then the financial planner, realizing the predicament she was in, possibly with me, she wouldn't look at me. She wouldn't talk to me on the phone. It was fun, but he was able to actually get her. He had to pay her $43 to release him from that contract. Right. I don't know.
Right. So all things, out of the way, everything taken care of. Finally, I know at some point at the end, the lender finally contacted the seller, and you said he was so rude to the seller. The seller said, "I'm out of this thing."
Yeah, so after our thing, and I was going to try to move forward with it, the seller and myself had been repeatedly calling, had it all kind of, we thought, worked out. And then he returned a call to the seller and was just, I'm sure maybe he was had a reason to be put out, but he was overly ugly, I suspect, based on the way he was when I talked to him.
Right.
But he hung up with the seller and he called me and he said, he was so mean to me. I don't care. I don't want him to get a penny. I'm not signing anything because I don't want him to get any money. Let him have the house. And at that point, for me, the deal was over, and I really just said, okay, I'm gonna go shopping, go do something more relaxing.
I know you had a couple other deals working, and you had kind of reached the point where you were like, man, this is just too much sugar for a dime. I'm out.
Right.
I've got other deals going on. I just don't want to deal with the hassle factor. Even though the payday looked good, you were just moving on. And it comes back to not getting too emotionally attached to a deal.
Right.
To where you just got to make it work. Even though financially it looked sound. I know we talked about it on the Tuesday night call, and it was like, the numbers make sense, but my goodness, man, this thing is just a lot of emotional, up and downs and everything else. And that was the point. I think Phil got interested. Phil lives out in the country of California, where you can't buy a house for less than $500,000. So it gets tough to really find deals and find anything that'll cash flow. So I know at that point, I remember Phil saying, raising his hand saying, Tracy, we need to talk about this now.
Right.
And I know that's when you two got together and got started. So Phil, you want to tell us a little bit about how you got introduced to this nightmare and what happened?
Yeah. So Tracy was recapping this deal in our coaching group deal evaluation meeting on Tuesday night. And as we're talking about it, she's, going through all the headaches that she's had so far. But I'm looking at the numbers and I'm like, well, yeah, it's some headaches, but I think it might make sense to try and pursue it a little bit. So she and I talked after the coaching meeting and went through the numbers in a little bit more detail. And I got back to her Tuesday night and said, yeah, let's try and do this. Keep in mind the foreclosure auction is scheduled for Thursday morning, and the payoff has to be received by Wednesday. So basically, we've got a day to put this thing together and get it done. And the conversation that she had, that the seller had with the lender was, either Tuesday night or Wednesday morning, that basically pissed him off to the point where he's like, I'm out. Screw those guys. I don't want to have anything more to do with them. So Tracy didn't hear boo from the guy Wednesday morning as we're trying to get this thing together. He's totally ghosting her. So she finally gets a hold of him and he says he's out. And so, at that point, it looked like the deal was done. We're like, okay, well. So Tracy goes shopping. I go to my W-2 job. And, as I'm on my way to my W-2 job, I'm like, man, it'd be nice if we could give it one more shot. So the house was posted on Zillow with a phone number on there. So I called the number. Wound up getting the wife, which we weren't aware of at this point either. So, wife, okay. And as she answers the phone, she says, well, if you're calling about the house, don't bother. We're letting it go to foreclosure auction tomorrow. Okay. So she does give me his cell phone number. So I call him, talk to him. Basically, I don't know, I must have said the right words, but he says, all right, I'll do the deal. So I text Tracy and say, hey, look, we're back on. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, Tracy's on the other side of town running errands and going shopping.
Yep. So the deal's back on.
Yep.
Go
ahead, Tracy.
I just said he called and said, I talked to your guy. And I was like, what guy? He was like a whole nother human being. He was ready to go and all. I don't know what Phil said to him, but
I think Phil probably said you're going to get money. That was probably part of it, because I know at several points, every time there seemed to be a new layer here, it looked like his payday was going to be less and less.
Right.
And, sort of the hassle factor fee, I call it. When I have to go to a lot more trouble, the seller gets less money, typically is the way it works. But I think Phil waved that check in front of his nose and he said, all right, we're back on, giddy up. Hey guys, Luke, good to see you. Andrew, Lisa, Rebecca asks, if a property goes to foreclosure, doesn't the owner get any overage? If that answer is yes, why did the financial planner and the seller file a lien? Well, I think that really comes back to just a knowledge of how things work. And I'm telling you, most financial planners, well, listen, if you want to be wealthy, do you really want to take advice from someone who makes $50,000 a year is my question. I don't know. I'd say the answer is no. I really, Rebecca, I think it just comes down to people knowing. Yes, after all the liens are paid and everybody's paid that has a judgment against the property, if there are any, the overage does go to the homeowner. But a lot of people don't know that, and that's why there are companies that contact you and go, "Hey, we found money that you're owed," and they collect a fee for doing it. Now, there are companies that specialize in this because people, they just aren't aware. And that's why it's so important that you know what the law is.
The Sub2Deals Show with your host, Sub2 expert William Tingle. We'll be right back. Hey Sub2ers, do you want to learn how to get the deed but need a little help getting started? Want to learn how to fill out the paperwork, how to use a land trust, how to market for deals, how to negotiate with sellers, and more? Join us in the Sub2Deals Facebook coaching group. Get the benefits of one-on-one coaching without the big price tag. Learn to do Sub2 right with coaching in a group setting and mastermind format. Head over to sub2deals.com right now and click on consulting and group coaching. We'll save you a seat. Back to the show, the Sub2Deals Show with your host, Sub2 expert William Tingle.
So Phil comes in, he calls the seller. The seller agrees to get back on, and Traci has to end her shopping spree and run across town. And you meet the seller at like a UPS store or something, don't you? And get all your documents done.
We thought we were meeting near where the wife worked, but I think the wife at that point was kind of spooked. And maybe that's why she kept quiet the whole time. She just didn't want her name tied up into his foreclosure business because they were trying to buy another house. I don't think that either one of them understood that because they were married, it really didn't matter if she signed. She thought that if she signed the sales contract, that somehow she was aligning herself with the foreclosure, and it was a lot of confusion on their end. And I think that just in general, they just had no clue. They really had no clue what was happening in their own.
Right. And this house is in Birmingham, and Birmingham, like some states, you even though the spouse may not be on title, you need to get something from them because of community property and that sort of thing. So anyway, you got that taken care of. Got your deed filed, and then Phil is trying to wire money and runs into an issue. Isn't that right?
Yeah. So as we're doing all of this, I asked Traci, I'm like, so did the mortgage company give us a specific timeline for sending the wire? And she says, no, they just said they needed it by, Wednesday. I'm like, oh man. Okay. Well, let's shoot for trying to get it done by 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, just to make sure that there's no issues, because, part of that mortgage company is in Georgia, part of it is in California, the house is in Alabama, let's make sure that we've got everything done. So we're pushing to get this all done. It included a couple of trips by Traci back to the notary to get a few more pages signed.
Right.
She got some done, and then we didn't quite have everything. I'm like, oh no, we need a couple more things. So
the warranty deed.
Exactly.
So anyway, she and I are texting back and forth. Meanwhile, I'm still in the middle of my W-2 driving around the countryside. So I'm pulled off to the side of the road just before 5 o'clock Eastern Standard, getting the wire all lined up, ready to go. And so I check with Traci. I'm like, hey, tell the title company the money's on the way, and just confirm that final amount. I didn't want them to have added any additional fees since they had emailed over that payoff or reinstatement amount previously. So she gets back to me. I make sure everything's good. I hit send. Look at the time stamp on my computer, and it says essentially 5:01 Eastern Standard. and I get an error message on the transaction for the wire. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. So I back it out. I try again, nothing. I'm like, oh. So I send a screenshot to Tracy. She forwards it on to the title company. So I back it all the way back out again. And as I go back in on the bank's automatic date for the transfer, it pops up as the day after on Thursday. Like, oh, crap. So I'm like, well, let's send it. And let's hope it goes through, and they're okay with it. So long story short, they agreed to wait for the wire to come. We sent them a couple of screenshots and they were good. And then we got word yesterday that wires received, sales canceled. We're all good to go.
Okay, great. So we save the day here. The seller sells you the house. You guys wire the money. So it sounds like, a month of just constant roadblocks and everything, but you guys finally get through that, get it done. Let's talk about the numbers here now, because that's what everybody wants to know. So tell us, Tracy, or Phil, either you guys get going here. So you guys are all into this house for how much?
We're all in for, we're going to be all in because there's a couple of little repairs that need to be done. We got to pay the wholesaler a little bit. We're going to be all in for about $32,000.
Okay. So your total on the house with mortgage balance, everything, essentially what you pay for the house is around 92,000, if I'm right.
Right around 92. You got it.
Okay. You got a mortgage balance. You had 83,000. You had to wire them 20 to stop the sale. Then you got $5,000 going to the seller and another 4 or so for repairs and miscellaneous, what have you. So you're in for about 92. What are your payments on the house every month?
So we pay, it's going to be about $579 a month that we will be paying to the mortgage company.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And that's PITI.
That's PITI. You got it.
Okay. And my understanding that you said the house is probably worth in the mid 120s, upper 120s. So you guys, instead of, if you guys are all in for 92 and you sold it, you say you marked it up just a tad, you sold it for 132, looked like about a $40,000 profit. You could flip it and make about 40 grand, but you guys have a different exit in mind.
Yeah, so we want to sell it with owner financing. And what we can do is we can sell it at a higher price. And so we think we're going to sell it in the mid to upper 130s, get about a $12,000 to $15,000 down payment. And we'll sell that with owner financing around 9.5%, which will make a PITI payment of about $1,100.
Right.
Rent in the area is about $1,000. So what that'll generate for us is a little over $500 a month cash flow.
Right.
So if we hang on to it for 4 years, we'll make about $24,000 there in monthly cash flow. And then at the back end, we'll make a little over $60,000 there at the back end payoff.
Right.
All told, we're going to make about $100,000, maybe a little over $100,000 on this house. That we bought for less than $100,000.
That's fantastic. You can't do anything like that in California for sure.
No.
I think Phil is sold on remote investing now. So yeah. And that's so I mean, is it worth the headache? I don't know. You guys are partnering on this thing and looks like y'all I mean, I don't know what your partnership agreement is, but if it's a 50-50 deal, I mean, you guys are looking at making over the next 4 years what the average family here makes a year in the United States. So I guess it's worth a little bit of grief for that. So I just wanted to bring you guys on to talk about this case study. It's a perfect, we all talk about the perfect sub-2 where a seller's in foreclosure, they owe 5 or 6 payments, maybe 10,000 to cure. And they're just going to walk away, give you the keys, sign some papers, and they're gone. And those are great, and they happen all the time. But occasionally you are going to run into something like this that's a little bit out of the norm. Now, the upside, and I know in several conversations with you, Tracy, you have indicated that, I mean, this really taught you a lot. You came into the group a couple of months ago looking to get your first sub-2. I know you've wholesaled several deals and done that for several years. But this was a real learning experience for you.
That is the very minimum statement you can make about this deal.
Yeah.
I did so many things trying to make this thing work, and that I had no idea how to do when I started doing it. And
Mm-hmm.
I really have to give it to Phil, though, because I would have probably just walked away and
Right.
bought my party dress and gone on about my way.
Yeah.
But I really credit him with keeping the deal together and
Yep.
and making it right on the back end too. So.
Yep. Okay. Fantastic. Okay, guys. Well, man, I appreciate y'all coming on today. Jim. Okay. Rudy. Good to see you guys here. Anyway, so glad to have y'all on. Anything else y'all want to add about the deal or anything else before we're out of here?
Let's do another one.
It was fun. One of the things I certainly credit Traci with is, she had an awful lot coming at her because, I mean, she was the boots on the ground. I was sitting out here in California. There wasn't a ton that I could do.
Mm-hmm.
And, she would ask, okay, what do we do next? And then she'd just go take care of it. Mm-hmm. And, for being her first sub-2, it was amazing. She held it all together, and we got everything that we needed and got it in there, just in time.
Great deal, guys. And I guess Traci's, if one of those comes along where they just throw you the keys and sign a few documents, you can probably handle that now, right?
I will not know what to do.
Great. Okay, guys. Thanks everybody that came on and shared this with us. It was a great story. I just wanted to let everybody know there are still some deals out there. People say, oh man, there are no foreclosures, this and that. But remember, and that was a question I saw earlier today. What about the foreclosure moratorium? Listen, that is for government-backed loans. Other lenders can and do still foreclose. This particular house we're talking about would have gone to the auction yesterday if Phil and Traci hadn't stopped it. It was on. You should see some of the text messages the lender sent her. I mean, they were just ugly and nasty and rude. If you don't pay in full, we're doing it. I don't even want to talk to you. And those guys can still foreclose. So maybe that's a new thing you need to be looking at. B and C. This guy had owned this property for what, Traci, 15 years?
Right.
So he had owned it for a long time, and they're still out there. And these guys are going to make six figures. So good for you. And thanks for coming on today and sharing the story. So, all right, guys, y'all have a great day. Go buy some houses.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Sub2Deals Show with William Tingle. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a review and subscribe. And for more great content and to stay up to date, visit sub2deals.com or on Facebook at Sub2Deals. We'll catch you next time.